In the autumn of 1964, tension had been building for months between a young martial arts teacher in Oakland and the traditional kung fu community across the bay in San Francisco's Chinatown. His name was Bruce Lee. He was 23 years old, 5'7", barely 140 pounds, and he had spent the year giving lectures that dismissed much of classical Chinese martial arts as what he called the classical mess, rigid forms, he argued, that would fail against a real, unscripted opponent. He had said this loudly. He had said it at demonstrations. According to several accounts, he had issued an open invitation. If any traditional stylist in San Francisco believed he was wrong, they were welcome to test it in person. Chinatown's martial arts community did not appreciate the challenge. Bruce Lee was also, by several accounts, unpopular for another reason. He was teaching Chinese martial arts openly to non-Chinese students, at a time when many traditional schools guarded their systems closely. The community settled on a response. A message was arranged, the details of exactly how remain disputed to this day, inviting a Northern Shaolin, Tai Chi, and Xingyi teacher named Wong Jack Man to answer the challenge directly, in person, at Bruce Lee's own school. What happened next was witnessed by somewhere between 7 and 15 people, depending on whose account you believe. It was never filmed. And for the next 50 years, the two men at the center of it would never fully agree on what took place. Wong Jack Man was 23 years old, tall, and light, around 135 pounds stretched over 5'10". He had arrived in San Francisco from Hong Kong only recently, already respected in traditional circles for his discipline in Northern Shaolin and internal styles. Unlike Bruce Lee, he had almost no interest in public attention. He would go on, in the decades afterward, to teach quietly for nearly 50 years without ever seeking the spotlight the fight would eventually bring him. On the evening the match took place, Wong arrived at Bruce Lee's Oakland school with 5 or 6 companions from Chinatown's martial arts community, men who, by Wong's own account, came mainly to observe. Also present was Bruce Lee's wife, Linda, 8 months pregnant at the time, and James Lee, a close training partner and associate. According to Wong's later account, he approached the exchange formally, bowing, offering a handshake, treating it as the kind of respectful challenge match his tradition recognized. According to that same account, Bruce Lee did not meet the formality. He opened aggressively, immediately, without the ceremonial pause Wong expected. From that first exchange, the two men's memories of the fight diverged sharply, not just in details, but in almost everything that matters: how it started, how long it lasted, and who, if anyone, clearly won. If you want to understand why this 18-second feeling exchange became one of the most argued over encounters in martial arts history, stay with us. And if a story like this is worth your time, subscribing helps us keep telling them. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Here is where the record splits into two accounts, and where honesty about the story requires presenting both rather than picking one as fact. Bruce Lee's account, later described to Black Belt magazine without naming Wong directly, was blunt. He described the fight as brief, describing an opponent who tried to run and being pursued, with Lee landing repeated blows to the head and back until his own hands swelled from the impact. In his telling, it was over quickly, and it left him disillusioned. He would later say the fight convinced him that Wing Chun, the style he trained in for a decade, wasn't practical enough for real, chaotic combat. Linda Lee Cadwell's account, written years later in her book about her husband, closely matched his: a formal bow, Wong adopting a traditional stance, Bruce opening with rapid straight punches, and within roughly 3 minutes, Wong retreating until Bruce brought the fight to the floor and demanded, twice, to know if it was enough. Wong Jack Man's account, published on the front page of the Chinese Pacific Weekly soon after, told a very different story, that Bruce opened aggressively and unconventionally, including strikes toward the eyes, that Wong defended for a long stretch without seriously pressing his own advantage when openings appeared, and that the exchange lasted far longer than 3 minutes. By his estimate and by Tai Chi teacher William Chen's later recollection, somewhere between 20 and 25 minutes. 2 men. 1 room. 2 entirely different fights remembered. Even the number of witnesses is disputed. Linda Lee Cadwell recalled around 13 people in the room, including herself. Wong Jack Man remembered 7. William Chen, the Tai Chi teacher who was there, recalled around 15, but when journalist Michael Dorgan tried to track down independent witnesses decades later for his 1980 investigation in Official Karate magazine, he found almost no one beyond the 3 men already named who was willing, or able, to confirm details firsthand. What both sides agree on is this: the fight happened. It was real, it was private, behind a locked door, with no footage and no neutral referee. And it mattered enormously to both men afterward, just not in the same way. For Bruce Lee, by his own account and Linda's, the fight became a turning point. Whether or not he considered it a clear victory, he treated it as proof that his existing training had limits. In the months that followed, according to Linda's later writing, he began obsessively reworking his approach, studying fencing footwork, boxing mechanics, and a wider range of striking systems, discarding techniques that didn't hold up under pressure. This period is widely regarded, by biographers and martial arts historians, as the true starting point of what would eventually become Jeet Kune Do, his own hybrid philosophy of combat, built explicitly around adaptability rather than rigid form. For Wong Jack Man, the fight became something else entirely, an event he rarely discussed publicly, and one he came to view, in a much later interview, with visible regret, describing the whole confrontation, on both sides, as driven by youthful arrogance more than anything worth being proud of. In the weeks after the fight, a public war of words broke out in the Chinese-language newspapers of San Francisco. Wong's detailed account ran in the Chinese Pacific Weekly, closing with an offer: if Bruce Lee disputed his version, Wong would agree to a second, public exhibition match, one witnessed by enough people that, in Wong's words, everyone can see with their own eyes. Bruce Lee never responded publicly. He gave no rebuttal in print, no counter-article, no public acceptance of the rematch offer. Instead, within a relatively short time, he closed his Oakland school entirely and relocated south to Los Angeles, the city where, within a few years, his path would cross with Hollywood and change the course of his life in an entirely different direction. Whether the fight caused that move, accelerated it, or was simply one factor among several, is something biographers still debate. What isn't in dispute is the timing: Oakland behind him, Los Angeles ahead of him, and a training philosophy under complete reconstruction. Wong Jack Man, for his part, never held the public rematch he'd offered. He went on to teach quietly in San Francisco and Oakland for the better part of 5 decades, largely avoiding the spotlight the fight had briefly handed him, before retiring in 2005. His most senior students carry his teaching forward today. So what actually happened in that room? The honest answer, after 50 years of retelling, books, magazine investigations, and even a feature film that dramatized its own version of events, is that we don't fully know, and anyone who tells you they do is choosing one disputed account over another. What we do know is this: 2 23-year-old martial artists, representing 2 entirely different traditions, one modern and confrontational, one classical and formal, fought behind a locked door in Oakland in the fall of 1964. No footage exists. The 2 men who were actually fighting never agreed, for the rest of their lives, on how long it lasted or how clearly it ended. Everyone else in the room remembered a different number of people present. And yet, out of that single, contested, undocumented evening, 2 real historical threads emerged that we can actually trace. One is Bruce Lee's own account of the experience reshaping how he trained, the seed of the philosophy that would eventually make him a global icon under the banner of Jeet Kune Do. The other is decades of quiet teaching from a man who never wanted the fight to define his life at all, and mostly succeeded in keeping it from doing so, right up until his death in 2018. There's a broader lesson in how this story survived, not in what happened in the room, which we can't fully reconstruct, but in what happened to the story afterward. It traveled through Chinatown, through martial arts circles across California, through decades of retellings in dojos and gyms, gaining details with each transmission, some of them accurate, many of them invented outright by people who wanted a cleaner story than the real, messy, disputed one. A private, undocumented 18-minute or 3-minute confrontation, depending on whose memory you trust, became, in popular telling, a mythic and cinematic showdown, eventually even inspiring dramatized film versions that took liberties the real event never earned. The real story is less tidy than the myth. It's two young men, both convinced of their own account, both changed by the same 18 minutes or 3 minutes in ways the other could never fully see or verify. It's a locked door. A war of words in a Chinese-language newspaper. A rematch that was offered and never happened. And two very different paths afterward, one leading to global fame, one leading to 50 years of deliberately staying out of the spotlight. Bruce Lee died in 1973, at 32, before his own account of that Oakland evening could ever be tested against a public rematch, before the martial arts world he helped popularize globally could ask him directly what he remembered 9 years later. His widow, Linda, and later his daughter, Shannon, continued to tell the story largely as he and she had recorded it, a decisive, brief victory that reshaped his training philosophy. Wong Jack Man lived until 2018, teaching in the Bay Area for the better part of 5 decades, largely declining to relitigate the fight publicly, occasionally correcting details when journalists came asking, and expressing, more than once, a kind of weariness about how much of his life story had come to orbit around 18 contested minutes from when he was 23 years old. Neither man ever got the neutral, filmed, undisputed record that might have settled it. What we're left with instead is something more honest than a clean story, two accounts, genuinely in conflict, from two men who were both actually there, and a historical mystery that, unlike most legends, never fully resolved into legend at all. If there's a single thread worth pulling from this, not a moral, exactly, because real history rarely hands you one, it's this: the story people tell about themselves after a defining moment, and the truth of what actually happened, aren't always the same document. Bruce Lee walked out of that room believing one version of events strongly enough to rebuild his entire training philosophy around it. Wong Jack Man walked out believing another version strongly enough to spend the rest of his life declining to argue about it in public. Both men were probably telling the truth, as they experienced it, from inside a fight neither of them could see with total clarity while it was happening, the way no one can, really, in the middle of 18 or 3 or 25 minutes of genuine, adrenaline-driven combat. That's the part of this story worth remembering, not who won, which we'll likely never conclusively know, but what each man did with his own account of it afterward. One built a philosophy that changed martial arts globally. The other built 5 quiet decades of teaching and mostly let the argument go. If you want us to dig into another disputed or lesser-known moment from martial arts history next, tell us in the comments, and let us know where in the world you're watching from tonight.